Hello, and welcome to By Design, a journey to discovering how culture influences the way people problem solve through the process of genuinely listening and learning from each other's stories. On this episode, I'll be talking with Alexa Ponce, who is a first-generation Cuban American. For over a year now, Alexa's been reaching out to her family members, collecting their stories as a passion project. After taking the DNA test, Alexa discovered that she is 50% Spanish from Spain. This led her to dig deeper and learn the stories behind her great-grandparents making their way from Spain to Cuba. Alexa has recently joined the team of XYMOGEN as a print designer, but her love for design is not limited to a day job. In her free time, Alexa works as a freelance multimedia designer for different companies nationwide. In this episode, Alexa will be talking about her upbringing feeling different, even though she grew up in Miami surrounded by other Cuban Americans. She'll also be sharing the story behind her struggles, trying to discover and document her family tree. Alexa, welcome to By Design.
Hi.
I'm so glad you're here. I can't wait for everybody to learn the journey that you've been on for the last year. So you were born in Miami as a Cuban American, but recently you discovered that your roots are from Spain. How did you come about this discovery?
Well, I always knew I was Spanish because most people are if you're from the Caribbean and stuff. And our language is Spanish. So yeah, basically I knew that, but I didn't know how far it went, like how deep our roots were in Cuba and where did it go from there. So yeah, it was just a year of just discovering and going on Ancestry and writing down information and contacting my great aunts and uncles. I have more than 30 of them. So, and most of them, all of them live in Miami. So it's just contacting them and talking to them and yeah, getting the facts straight and hearing family stories and documenting that using my tech abilities as a graphic designer to start collecting in an iCloud, basically family photos of my great aunts and uncles who are in their 70s and 80s now. Pictures when they got married in Cuba when they were in their 20s, like my age. So it was really interesting in hearing their stories.
Yeah.
So, that's
So,
basically what I've been doing.
I can't hear you. Sorry. Say that again.
That's basically what I've been doing the past year or so.
Yeah. So how did you come about starting this whole project?
Well, I've always been interested in my family history and where people come from. I love traveling. I love learning about new cultures. And I moved from Miami to Orlando to go to UCF, and now I live here permanently. But I got a great appreciation once I left my family, being around them all the time and stuff. Like, where am I from? And who am I? I mean, those are good questions. And then, especially the past year, what has happened in the news where you might be a certain race and be discriminated against and all that stuff. No one's 100% anything. So it's interesting you can be the whitest person that you think you are, but once you get your DNA tested and you actually do research, you find out you're not.
Yeah.
And I was completely open to that. I was like, yeah, I know, we're Catholic and we're Spanish and stuff, but, who knows? Maybe I'm like 50% from Africa, which actually I'm like, like 20, 30% because one of my great-grandfathers was from the Canary Islands, which is right next to like Africa. So again, it's those little things that you're not 100% what you may think you are.
Wow, that's amazing. So can you talk a little bit about your grandparents' journey? Were you able to discover why they left Spain to come to Cuba? And then why did they leave Cuba to come to Spain? I mean, to come to the US.
Yeah, so my great-grandparents are the ones that left Spain to go to Cuba. And I'm not really sure yet why. My best guess is around the same time was the Spanish-American War. So they were probably assisting in some way, either Spain keeping control of Cuba, or maybe they were assisting the US, and Cuba, because they were allies or something, with that whole deal. So I'm not sure, because that goes like pretty far back. That's like the 1890s type of thing. I think it's my great-great-grandparents. Sorry, I get confused with greats. But Yeah, and basically my grandparents on both sides, the reason why they left Cuba in the 1960s to go to Miami and New Jersey, first New Jersey, then Miami, was basically persecution. Fidel Castro took over power, and they were being persecuted, and people were being arrested and going missing just for not being for the government. And opportunities. They left basically to bring more opportunities to their kids and their grandkids. And thankfully, my mom's parents are still alive. And now that I'm older and I appreciate it, I get to ask them all these questions and ask them what they did here in a country, in New Jersey, coming from the Caribbean where it's not cold at all, and like dealing with the cold and not speaking the language. So those are interesting stories I just try to write down and record, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So it's good that I have those memories, and I have videos and pictures and these documented accounts that I can share with my kids, hopefully, and grandkids, and show them like real accounts, like these were real people.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. So how has your family have they been giving you a hard time, or how, like, it's not easy to go around, especially if you have 13, you said, great aunts and uncles.
No, I have more than 30.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. So from your mom's side, you have how many?
So my mom's mom has like 11 or 12 siblings. And my mom's dad has like same thing, 11 or 12. One of them has 11 and one has 12. And then my dad's side, my grandfather had one sibling, and my grandmother, I don't remember the number, maybe like 7 or 8.
Wow.
So it's a good amount. It's about 30 people.
Oh my God, that's amazing, because my dad he's the second oldest of 8, and I thought that was a lot, so it's amazing that there's, back in the day, even though they were going through all those struggles, they still managed to have so many children and find like joy and love, like just having the family.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my best description is there was no TV in Cuba, so you had to keep busy somehow.
I love that. You're so funny. So, okay, talk to me a little bit about your upbringing in Miami. I know you struggled a little bit with kind of fitting in, and you felt a little bit weird. So, can you talk about your experience and then how you overcame that?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Miami. Miami is huge, but I was definitely born and raised there. And I definitely enjoyed my upbringing. I think it was great to be around so many Hispanics like myself and just enjoy the culture. It was basically, I would say, I guess, it was similar to being in Cuba, because so many people are Cuban American or just Cuban. So you learn those stories from different generations since I was a child, and speaking the language and speaking English as well. But it was tough, definitely. Even in my family, I'm kind of like the black sheep, because I went towards being American and speaking English. And my family's not like that. They mostly speak like Spanglish or just Spanish all day. And I don't know, that's how I became a black sheep since I was a kid. And I speak Spanish slightly with an accent, an American accent. So I was called, with my peoples, a gringa, which I'm not. Both my parents are Cuban, and I was born in the States and stuff. So I just kind of embraced that. I was like, well, if they're not going to accept me, I'll just be American. So it's interesting, but I don't hold anything against anyone. Like, I love my culture, and yeah, I speak maybe like a gringa, but at least I know my language and I know how to speak to them.
Okay, so for someone who doesn't understand what a gringa is, like me, what is that? Can you explain the term?
Yeah, it's a white person.
Does it like translate to white person?
That's the best translation. It's a white person. A gringa is someone, a white person.
Oh my God, that's funny. It's funny. We don't have a term. Oh, well, we kind of do. Ajnabi. Ajnabi means foreigner. So, ajnabiya means you're a foreigner for a female. So, but nobody's like, I've never, been called that, but we definitely use that term. And it's not, not in a derogatory,
Yeah,
sorry, not in a derogatory way.
it's cool.
Do you see this is where my second English as a second language comes out. It's just like Hebah, oh my God.
Yeah.
Um but it's definitely a term. But is gringa used in a negative manner?
Um, I wouldn't say so. Like, I think it's just to describe people in general, like where they're from. Because within at least my perspective, like growing up and stuff, the way you speak Spanish, people can tell where you're from, whether you're South American or from the Caribbean, usually what country too.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you can definitely like hear that out. So I wouldn't consider it derogatory unless someone tells me otherwise, but
Yeah.
I've used it all my life and my family as well. So it's just kind of a term to talk about others
Yeah.
under
Yeah.
white complexion.
Yeah, the term others has been very common in a lot of cultures. I think especially in my village culture, others is a big thing, and it's not a positive thing, but I understand it's more of like a way to kind of protect the culture that's within. And because recently with technology and everything, like we are starting to lose the culture, and people are forgetting a lot of like the folklore and the poetry and everything about our ancestry. And I think as we start to forget, the older generation at least starts to kind of get upset, and that's their way of coping.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I like that you ended up kind of embracing what everybody was calling you, instead of like embracing yourself as a kind of like a Cuban American. But I feel like as you grew older and you were like, okay, that was not okay for them to talk to me that way. I'm going to embrace both sides. And you ended up doing that. I feel like with this project that you're working on right now, it's kind of your way of like solidifying like who you are, where you're from, and then if anybody gets back at you, then you're like, oh well, what do you know about your family, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think it surprised a lot of my family members, some that I might not be as close to, or some that I'm closer to, that I was asking so many questions because most of my family is all in Miami. I have over 300 cousins, and they're all in Miami. And I was the one that decided to move away. So, they see me because I do make it out to family parties, like big ones. I'll go down for the holidays. But I think they were surprised because they know I don't really speak Spanish to them as often. I am a gringa, I do speak more English. And I usually keep to myself. I'm pretty like quiet, just do my own thing. And the past, year, actually like contacting them and asking them questions and recording all this, and for them to actually like see it like throughout this journey, they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so impressed. Like someone in their early 20s is interested in my life and
Yeah.
what I did and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, I need this information before you guys all die. And then
Oh my God, you're so funny.
yeah, I told some of my great aunts that, and they were just like, okay, that's nice. I was like, yeah, for real. Like, people are gonna start dying off, and then I'm just like screwed.
Oh my God, you're so funny. So tell me a little bit about, okay, talk to me about your process. What kind of questions you ask them? Tell me like a little bit more about ancestry.com, because I was interested, like, I think we had this conversation before where I was telling you that one of my father-in-law's like kind of a dying wish was to continue the family tree that he started. And his family tree goes back to the 1700s. And it's basically our great, 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 great grandpa from my husband's side of family. I think his name is Abraham. And basically, he wanted me to extend the family tree. And I started doing that, and it was very, very difficult because now the tree is gigantic. There's over like hundreds of people on there. And I was only documenting the males because another cultural thing where, the female, once she gets married, she moves out of the family. So it's not that there's no point in recording her name. It's just it's an easier way to track, I guess, the seeds. I don't know, but so I started doing that, and it was very difficult for me to continue to document because everybody was having children. There's so many people having kids, and I was doing it by hand. So Ancestry.com, I think, came out a few years after that, and I never got the chance to kind of start doing it. So can you talk a little bit about the process of Ancestry.com and how you came about discovering it, and what kind of information were you looking for?
Yeah, so basically, Ancestry.com, I think, is the most well-known one, and it's pretty awesome. It's free. There is a paid version for you to get information, but since I already have the information, I could plug it in. The UI isn't great for, I don't know, I think it's like the website or the app, one of those two, but it can work on your phone. It could work on the website as well. So it's easily trackable. And you can share your family tree with other family members so they can put information in your tree. So that's great. You can record all types of things. You could put in pictures. You can put in videos. You can put in audio, facts, medical history. They just came out with like a new kind of branch that you can put in what each one of your family members died from. So it helps you out. It could be a health.
Yeah, trait. A way to track health, which is very important.
Yeah, family history and stuff. So basically, I just started, and then it just grew from there. I just started asking people, and they started giving me information and more information. And then, I had dead ends. Some people wouldn't contact me back or give me the resources that I was asking for. So then I went to another cousin, and I would ask them. So it just kind of grew from there. And my sister was helping me out for a little bit with it. So it was just a lot of exploring, a lot of like digging, and then getting all the information and putting it together and making sure it's like recorded all together. But it's a great process. The paid version, I went for like the 15-day free trial, and any information that they had there, which is basically records, so death certificates or marriage certificates, all that stuff, I would plug it in, and it joins it to that person in that profile of that person. Unfortunately and fortunately all at the same time. So Cuba hasn't released their records to the US, and I don't even know if they have records to start with. And my whole family's from there. I'm first generation, born in the United States, stuff like that. So information like that I can't really get. I don't have like a US census of my family members, all that stuff, other than the ones that are alive now. So yeah, that's where it becomes iffy. Some people can't get records. That's why I'm so thankful I have a large family and they're alive and they're centralized, that I can ask around, because other than that, I'd be lost. Like I wouldn't be able to have information if it wasn't for that. So
yeah. Well, okay. So let's focus on the good stuff. So, what are some of the great and not so great discoveries that you've made along the way?
I personally think all discoveries were great because I learned something I really didn't know in the past. So it was great to learn more about my dad's side of the family, which I'm not as close to as my mom's side. So it was learning and exploring and just hearing facts that I didn't know, and getting closer with cousins that maybe I've met or maybe I haven't met, and just appreciating them so much more. So that was an awesome discovery. And getting closer to my great aunts and uncles that are alive now, and just asking them basic questions like, did you go to school? Like, what level of education? That's another important thing. Like in Cuba, my aunts and uncles don't have much of an education, and that's why my mom instilled in me it's so important to go to school and like get an education because it wasn't, the opportunities weren't there for them. So it's important.
So are you a first generation graduate, like university graduate?
Yes, I am. Well, my aunt has a master's, so like yes and no at the same time. It really like varies. I have, some people in my immediate family that dropped out in high school, and then I have some, like my aunt, that got a master's. And my mom, she went to community college all throughout my childhood, taking a class when she could, and she graduated maybe my 10th grade of high school.
Wow.
Yeah, with honors and everything. And I was just like so proud of her.
Oh my God, I would be too. Yeah.
Yeah, because she did it all throughout as a kid, me and my sister, and I saw that and I was just like, oh my gosh. So, I'm very proud of my mom, and she instilled in me. She's probably gonna start crying when she's gonna start crying, probably write me a letter. But yeah, I'm so proud of her, and just seeing her struggle, because like your mind's not as fresh as it is when you're like in your teens or your 20s. And she struggled so much, but she like continued to do it. And I saw that, I was like, well, I want to go to college, and if my mom can do it and graduate with honors, like I can do that. So
yeah.
that's what I did.
Good for you. Good for you. Yes, she's going to be so proud of you. I love this because I can completely relate to everything you're saying, because education in Palestine was not a thing. Like they didn't even have, like we were just discussing this, my mother-in-law and my husband and I were discussing how, when did they start having schools in our little village, and I found out, I mean, we don't really think about it because education has been instilled in me from the day I was born. Like, you need to finish university, but I realized that me and like my cousins are the first females generation to finish university. So from my dad's side. So obviously, like when you realize that, you're just like, whoa, it's monumental. But because we've always, like it's normal. Finishing our university was a normal thing throughout growing up. So we didn't really think much of it. And then when you put it into perspective, you're like, oh my God, I really accomplished something here, Good for you.
Thanks. That's a very expensive piece of paper.
Okay, let's not get into that. That's awesome. Okay, so can you share some misconceptions that you think people might have about the Cuban culture that you want to bring awareness to?
Sure. I've heard this like all throughout my childhood, that Cubans are good swimmers.
Really?
Yeah, it's because later generations have come illegally through a raft, because it's only 90 miles from Cuba to Key West. So yeah, so I've been asked like, oh, are you a good swimmer? First of all, my parents came through plane, not through a boat or a raft. It's a different generation. They came when it was legal, when Fidel Castro first took over. So they came through plane to the US, and I am a good swimmer, but that has nothing to do with me being Cuban. It's just like, I grew up in Miami around the water, going to the Keys, and I love swimming. Like, it's not because I'm Cuban. And another misconception, like when I've left Florida and gone to different states, I've heard from just gringos that basically they think all Hispanics are Mexican. I'm not Mexican at all. Like, so that was a little strange. And I was just like, no, like, what are you talking about? So those are interesting facts. But I love where I'm from, and I love growing up in Miami and being Cuban, and I embrace it when I want to embrace it, like we all do.
Yeah. I remember when you first told me that you were Cuban, I was like, really? I couldn't place you because for me, you look American, but what does American mean? It's just a mixture, I don't know. It's a melting pot in my opinion. But it was very interesting to hear you say, I'm Cuban, but then I start thinking of all my other Cuban friends, like, Kirsten and Kirsten. And I'm like, yeah, they don't even look Cuban either. Like, what does Cuban look like?
Yeah, usually the accent gives it away. And I actually don't really have an accent because I've worked very hard not to have one.
Yeah.
And then I'm very white. I have a very white complexion, which people associate being Hispanic as being tan, which is crazy because I'm from an island. Like, we're from the Caribbean, and like me and my family are super white.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like things like that. Everybody, you could be Hispanic and you could be black. You could be tan and you could be white, and you could
Yeah.
have colored eyes. So it's just, yeah, it really depends. Most of my great aunts and uncles have colored eyes and are super white and have light hair and things like that. So we come in all colors.
No, I love that you said that, because that's something that I can relate to, because I'm super light skinned for a Middle Eastern girl. Growing up seeing the commercials about like bleaching your skin and stuff, like I didn't understand it. And then growing up and coming to America for the first time, in 98, a lot of the people in my class used to think that I was like European, like French or whatever, because I had black hair with blue eyes. They couldn't really place me either. And when I was asking my dad, like I was like, Dad, like we marry from the same village. We have the same gene pool. Like where did this gene come from? Where did I get the blue eyes and the light skin? And he was just like, I don't know. It's a fluke somewhere, you know? So definitely understand not being able to kind of like fit in or be placed somewhere based off of just your looks alone. As for my accent, I totally did not think that I had one until like 2 years ago, when somebody finally pointed it out. And then all of a sudden I started hearing it, and I started hearing the stutter in my like speech, and I started hearing like stumbling over my words and all of that. So that was not helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, same. Like, my siblings don't speak like I speak. They have more of a Miami accent, and my parents as well. And it's just like years ago, I became like very conscious of it, and I tried to correct it because those were words that I can tell people can see that I spoke Spanish, I spoke another
Yeah.
language. And I don't know why. I don't know when that happened or anything like that, but I've been able to correct it that I don't really know. And I sometimes certain words I know like catch me up subconsciously, and I end up saying the word with like a southern twang because I
Uh-huh.
know it would come out with a Hispanic kind of like slur or something. And I don't know when that started. Like, it's really odd. It's just very subconscious. I don't know. And I didn't know you were Middle Eastern either, because again, you're like very fair skin and you have like beautiful eyes, like beautiful
Oh,
like
thank
blue.
you.
Yeah, it's so dreamy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. So, unlike others, when you left Miami, I feel like instead of experiencing culture shock, you kind of felt culture acceptance. Or am I getting that incorrectly?
No, you're getting that 100% correctly.
Okay. Talk
Yeah,
about your experience. Yes.
yeah, in Miami. So I grew up in Miami. I went to community college in the next county, which was like Broward County. So it was more American. Down the street was a rodeo, and it was just like very American, and I loved it. And basically, I moved here to Orlando, and I was like, oh man, my peoples. And yeah, and I blended in well, that people didn't know I was Hispanic. And, you know, I have very white interests in life. So I like to go hiking and kayaking and fishing, and I don't know, all these type of things that I guess you would consider American or white. I have no clue why, but
It's just you. It's not you. Like I don't. I'm not feeling comfortable putting a label on it, because like I enjoy some of those things. That doesn't mean like, I mean, there's nothing negative about being white. The whole point of this is to embrace everything. Just embrace yourself and being you, and not have a certain label or whatever it is. And seeing that we are all interested in the same things and have differences, yes, but those differences are interesting, and let's get to know each other. You know what I mean? So I love that you kind of done that subconsciously already. Yeah, go ahead.
I have all types of interests, and I'm Hispanic, man. Like it doesn't matter, and I love them all. Like, and that's it. Like basically, I just fell into like a normal realm here that I can just kind of like blend in, do what I love, and you know, once people find out that I actually am Hispanic, you know, they always ask me, "Do you speak Spanish?" I'm like, "Yes." You know, do you are you half Hispanic? And I'm like, no. I'm like, both my parents are Cuban. So it's very interesting. Like you still get doubt, like, oh, but because you like this or because you hang around these people, you know, you must only be half. I'm like, no, I was like born and raised in Miami. Like, how more Hispanic could you get?
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so let's get a little bit more into your Cuban side. Can you talk about some like traditions or, cultural traits that your family has that people might find interesting?
Yeah, definitely. So I only thought that I only found out maybe a couple of months ago that some of them were like unique traditions to us. Because I thought they were normal. I grew up around them, so I thought everyone did them. So basically, one is that for New Year's, you eat 12 grapes and you make a wish on each grape. And actually, when I told my mom this earlier in the week, she's like, "Oh, you're supposed to eat an apple as well." And I was like, man, in my 23 years of life, I have never eaten an apple with the 12 grapes. And she's like, yeah, but say it correctly. Like, you're supposed to eat an apple. So she's saying that the tradition is an apple and 12 grapes, but I have never had an apple. So whatever, but it's supposed to be good luck. Every grape is supposed to be like, you're supposed to make a wish and it's supposed to be 12 grapes and good luck for the year. And another one is you throw like a bucket of water behind you on the front door for New Year's as well. And it's basically like take out the old, bring the new luck for the new year.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then a big tradition too is like it's called La Caja China, so a Chinese box, that's the translation. And it's this like box and we roast like a whole pig. So I grew up either going to a farm and being like with my dad and being like, oh, I want that pig. And then they kill the pig, they take out everything, the organs, you hang it on a rack, and then you put seasonings, and yeah, you basically roast it all day in a box. And that's probably a big reason why I'm not completely vegetarian, because I don't even like pork, but for the holidays, like it's a tradition. I grew up seeing it and eating it and enjoying it. So that's a big one too. You know, we just have a huge pig, and roast it in a box with its eyes there, its tongue, you know, and
God.
yeah, they put like an apple in its mouth usually, and just seeing that. So it's interesting because the last maybe year or two, I've told some friends that aren't Hispanic about that, and they're like, what? Like, you see its eyes? I'm like, yeah, like my grandfather, I know, he eats the eyes sometimes, or like the tongue. And I'm just like, they're just grossed out. But it's normal because I grew up doing it all my life, and like no one ever said it was strange or like weird.
Oh my God. Okay, so two things. You're not the first one to tell me about the grape tradition. I actually had Natalie Vasquez on the show 2 weeks ago, and she's from Costa Rica. She's Costa Rican, Puerto Rican, and German. And that's a tradition that her grandma kind of like taught her on New Year's to do. So that's very interesting to hear that, you're from Cuba and you did the same thing. So I'm now super curious to find out, like, how did that tradition happen and come about? And then the pig, oh my God, Ana Juan Gomez. I think do you remember her? She was
Yeah,
a year. Yeah. So she, whenever she goes to Spain, that's similar to what they used to do. They would basically take the pig, slaughter it, and then like cure it for the rest of the year. And she said that's the most delicious. I don't eat pigs, I'm just saying. But she says it's the most delicious meat that she's ever had. So it's
Yeah, it's
interesting.
very good. It's so good. That's why like I only eat pork like once a year, and
Wow.
it's for the holidays because I'm not a huge fan of pork. But yeah, during the holidays, I'm like, yeah, sure, because it is very good. And I just grew up doing it. It's part of the culture.
Wow. We do something similar for Eid, and Eid is our holiday. Or when people come back from Mecca pilgrimage, we do the same thing. We slaughter a sheep though, not pigs because we don't eat pigs. And yeah, we stuff the intestines and all the interesting stuff. But I've never eaten it. Like I've never ate it because yeah, the smell alone kind of like runs me out of the house. But it's a big tradition, and it's like people love it. And yes, I they eat the eyes and the tongue and the everything.
Yeah, it's different, definitely.
It's same thing, different animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you moved to Orlando because you wanted to study graphic design. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, so I grew up and I always loved art. I wasn't always the best student in school, and that's probably why I always doodled. And then when I would, put my head back up, I was like, oh, I don't know what's going on. Let me just continue doodling. And
Mhm.
basically, I went to a vocational school for high school, and instead of having electives, my electives were graphic design. That's what I chose. And for 3 years, every day for 2 hours, I learned the software needed to be a graphic designer and some skill set like typography and all that stuff, the fundamentals of design. And I fell in love with it. And that's what I do now. And it's not a job to me. Like literally, it's just like my life. Like it's my hobby all thrown into one. And I just love what I do. And it really does not feel like a job. And I just like making cool stuff and traveling and learning about different cultures and all those influences and putting them in my design. And another important thing is, since I am ethnic, I guess, and
Mhm.
I do designs, I do notice that a lot of times in branding materials, all the photos are just of Americans, people with
Mhm.
white complexion. So I make it a point to have, or to fight at least, to be like,
Yeah.
hey, we need to have someone tan. We need to have someone like Asian,
Mhm.
because you want to see everybody wants to be included. And if I was of another race and
Mhm.
I saw all the advertisements just being of a white happy family, I'd be like, well, this doesn't include me. And it shouldn't be like that. The US and every place is so diverse. You
Yeah.
should be represented in all material.
I feel like especially kind of in the United States because it's kind of the dreamland, and it gathers everybody from all around the world. So it the advertising needs to kind of direct its message to everybody, and it's definitely hard to include everyone. But if you see somebody who's different, you can definitely relate to that person. That was my next question. So how does your love for adventure and travel influence the way that you problem solve?
Basically, it just gives me a new perspective. It makes me more aware that, and to learn, just be aware of different cultures. And when I problem solve, because I love to travel and go to cultural festivals, I go to like all types. About 2 weeks ago, I went to, what is it? A Turkish one. And like a week or two before that, I went to a Taiwanese one. So it's like learning about these,
Wow, yeah.
yeah, learning about those cultures and appreciating them and accepting food that you have no clue what's in it, but it just tastes good. And you just deal with it. And just learning about it, I think it's very eye opening, especially as a graphic designer. You have no clue what you're going to work on tomorrow. 1 minute I could be, and I've worked on print materials and more like digital stuff and ad agency work. So I don't know what's going to come in, but literally my personal experiences really affect it, because we might have something come in targeted towards, I don't know, Hispanics. And because I'm Hispanic, I'm like, well, I know Hispanics don't, I don't want to generalize, but I can be like, well, this is my experience growing up Hispanic, or my experience going hiking. And you kind of have that inside knowledge and perspective of something that you tried and other cultures and other people. So that's what I try to do.
Which, you know, is very important for empathy, and that's a big word that I've been hearing all over the design community. And I feel like people who travel and, you know, visit different places and talk to different people, and they all of a sudden have empathy for them, and it becomes easy to solve a problem, a design problem that, you know, is going to address people from multiple cultures. I think it's very important to have that experience. And you're lucky that you kind of have a diverse background, but you're continuously exploring new kind of like grounds, and, you know, meeting new people, and just kind of widening that knowledge span that you have. So can you talk a little bit about your work? Where do you work now? What kind of freelance do you do? Can you just educate us about your career path currently?
Yeah, sure. So I work right now as the lead designer for a magazine for a company named XYMOGEN. Yeah, you were a little
I
off.
said it so bad.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's called XYMOGEN. It's a family-owned supplements company. And yeah, they do everything in house, from distribution to printing of the labels to marketing to everything. It's about 400 people in staff, all in this big building by iDrive, and I love it so far. So basically, the magazine is targeted towards more patients and practitioners as well. So it goes out to different doctor's office throughout the US for now, because they're just starting. I'm working on the second issue with them. And then I'm also a freelance designer, like most designers are. And I work as a graphic designer for an email marketing company in California. I've been doing that for about 6-7 months now. So I create designs for this company that does incentives for bigger companies such as Dropbox or Apple and other smaller companies. And then I also design do freelance work for 2 ad agencies, one in Miami, one in Orlando. And I also just started as a freelancer for a college in North Carolina. So those are like my prime, like kind of accounts that I get work for at least every week or two. So, and then jobs always come in, and they're like, yeah, I'll see if I can do it or whatever. But those are like my 4 kind of like major accounts.
Cool. So what advice do you have for someone who is trying to kind of widen their horizon and become more culturally diverse to enhance their problem solving skills?
Yeah, basically just accept it. I get so frustrated when I travel and you in another country and you're just like, oh, I want to eat McDonald's. And accept the country for what it is, even if it's something like you wouldn't normally eat or normally experience. Like, just accept it. Don't ask so many questions. Like, life is so well organized, and like we have to worry about bills, and we have to worry about responsibilities, that I don't really like knowing everything. You know,
Yeah.
I like that surprise in life, and you know, learning about different cultures gives me that, because I might not speak the language, and the way we connect is because I'm willing to accept their culture and try their food or try to speak their language, and not be like, oh, you have to speak English. No, like, you can speak whatever language you feel comfortable with, and I'll work with you from there. And that's basically where I'm at. Like, just be open and accepting. That we all have to be open and accepting to one another, and appreciate. Don't consider something, oh, that's weird. it's weird
Mhm.
for you because you didn't grow up around it, but
Mhm.
for a lot of people it's just normal. It's their everyday. So just accept it. Even if it's something like you would normally not do or eat. Definitely I've like encountered that. I had like
Yeah.
pig's feet at the Taiwanese festival and it
Yeah.
was so gross. Personally, I did not like it. It was very gelatinous.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I did not think it was gonna be like that, and
Yeah.
I would normally not eat that. But I accepted it. I'm not gonna say I ate all of it. I ate a little bit of it, and I was like, "I'm sorry, I can't take this." It was just really gooey, and it had a nail. It had like the actual like foot and nail of the pig, and it was just really weird. But I mean, I ate some of it until I just said I can't. But I accepted it.
Oh my God. That's very courageous of you. The food, I actually didn't really get to experience different cultural foods until I came to the US, I was exposed to, Indian, Chinese, Japanese, just everything. Even like Middle Eastern food here is just completely different. The only time I had a different food when I was in Jordan is when we would travel to like Turkey or Syria or Lebanon, but it was similar food, because they're just our neighbors. So the hummus would just taste different, they would have a different recipe, add a different spice in it. The falafel, same thing, or the gyros. Um, so, okay, final question before we enter the after show or end the show. How do you embrace your weird?
How do I embrace it? I've just learned to accept it. Like, if and just accept it and learn as much as I can from the people around me and how they were raised and how they just live with it. Like it to me, it's not weird. It's just normal and just accepting it and be like, oh man, this person's a cool person. And it's not because they're from whatever culture. It's just because they're them. And
Mhm.
yeah, just learn as much as you can and hopefully as a graphic designer I can affect change in some work that I do and be like, oh, my friend's Taiwanese, and know the difference between different Asians,
Mhm.
and be like, oh no, that's a picture of a Japanese man, not a
Yeah.
Chinese man. And hopefully that affects change. It sounds so silly, but it's design affects a lot of people, and you want to be as aware of your surroundings and being open and diverse as possible. And that's just what I try to do.
Yeah, and then put yourself in that person's shoes, just like you were saying that just because you're Cuban, that doesn't mean you're Mexican. So put yourself in the other person's shoes, you were talking about like the difference between Japanese and Chinese. So be a little bit sensitive and ask. There's no harm in asking. And the same thing with me, like I wouldn't want to be mistaken for a different Middle Eastern country. Not because I have anything against that country. It's just like, just ask me. You don't need to generalize, right? So, I think it's just a way of kind of like building an actual relationship. And then you realize that everyone has their own traits, everyone has their own interesting like traditions and habits and cultural things. And then you'll find that even though they're weird to you, they're actually very normal to them. And you're the weird one, and then you just think about it, like weird is not a bad thing. It's actually just means that you're unique and that you're different and that you have an actual identity. So embrace your weird, right?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you there.
So, Alexa, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Oh, yeah, sure. So you can find me on Instagram at alexa.pons.designs. And my website's alexaponcedesigns.com. And my name's Alexa Pons. So you'll find me on Facebook as well with that. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Alexa, for sharing your story with us today. It's been wonderful learning more about your heritage, traditions, and culture. To learn more about Alexa, visit alexaponcedesign.com and follow her on Dribble at alexa-ponce and Instagram at alexa.ponce.design. Please visit hebahbydesign.com/9 to watch today's episode, video recording, show notes, and extras. I want to encourage you to listen positively because when people talk about their culture, it usually involves very intimate aspects of their life. It's an honor to be invited into their safe space, and it becomes your responsibility to protect and uphold the integrity of their stories. I'd love to thank you for joining me, and remember, your normal is weird to people who don't understand you, but your weird is what makes you special. So embrace your weird and spread to others the love and acceptance you want to gain. Until next time, I'm your host, Hebah, and you've been listening to By Design. After
Woo!
show!
Oh man, that was stressful.
Really? You did amazing. Oh my God. I'm always so impressed by my guests. Like, you guys talk so comfortably, and I'm sitting here stuttering.
Yeah. I'm just confused. I can't believe an hour passed. I'm just like, I don't even know what I said, but I said something.
You did amazing. Everything that came out of your mouth was gold. I love your experiences. I love, like, your message kind of aligned perfectly with my like the message that I have in my outro, which was perfect because I was like, did this girl watch my episodes before?
I watched one of them fully, and then the second one with Tony.
Yeah.
I'm almost done with it. I actually know Tony as well.
I love Tony. Tony's awesome. He's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm almost done with Tony's.
Cool. Okay, so we have 2 people in the chat room, but 4 people watching. So Andrew at Blue Mountain Dew's asking, was there ever a stigma from your family/culture about pursuing a career in the arts?
Yes and no. I mean, I think at the beginning they were just worried if I would be able to make some money. And my sister went to the same vocational school as me, and she chose web design, and she didn't pursue it completely. So it was that stigma that I was going into the same thing that my sister didn't pursue. And web design was very different. That was when it was called web design.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, my sister, so I had that stigma to go to, but now it's just like, I don't know if my family completely understands what I do. I try to explain, but it's very kind of difficult because it's different mediums, and since I work a full-time job and then I'm also a freelancer, I try to tell them, oh yeah, I'm working on this, but they get confused because it's just different disciplines and mediums, so it's a lot of like weirdness. They just know I work and I like what I do. But basically, yeah, they just accepted that it's not just a job for me. It's just like the way I live. And like yesterday, I was telling you, I went to see Aaron Draplin and totally became a nerd fangirl around another fellow designer. And it's, again, like I paid money. It wasn't my 9-to-5 job. I did this because I wanted to meet him and hear his experience as a graphic designer, and that had nothing to do with my job. That was just me loving my industry and who I am and all our stories and hearing his story. So yeah, I mean, as long as you show that you're passionate, I think your family will approve. They'll figure it out, like, oh, okay, like, even, she'll find a way to make money. And at this point, that's where they're kind of at, like, I'll find something. The title as a graphic designer is so broad, and people don't understand that literally you can have a job just doing letter forms, and you could be a hand letterer. And yeah, there's so many fields within that. It's graphic design, but then again, it's not. And then you could be a graphic designer and focus on branding, or focus on print design, or more web stuff, or social media. So there's a lot of breakdowns within that, and things overlap as well.
Yeah, I agree. And Andrew's saying, like, graphic design encompasses so many things and is always changing. The term might be too broad, which it is. I went to a talk about 2 weeks ago, and it talked about the history of graphic design compared to architecture, and how old it is next to architecture. And if you think about it, it's kind of a derivative. of architecture, except now we're doing like a visual language. And then the different branches after graphic design, which is web and just anything digital now. And you compare them, they're just little, young, graphic design is in its adolescence, and then digital and web and all of that is kind of like a baby right now compared to architecture, which is thousands of years old. So it's definitely changing as technology continues to expand. I love doing what I'm doing. Obviously, I love to talk to people and help them solve their problems. And this is why I started the show, is trying to figure out how culture influences how people problem solve. So in the future, I can, solve problems with diversity in mind. Andrew also said that some of his family traditions is that they don't wash clothes on New Year's. He explained why, but I don't understand his explanation. And the other thing is that they eat black-eyed peas for good luck.
That's interesting. Yeah, we wash our clothes, that I know of, unless I find something else out. I don't know.
Yeah, but see, it's interesting. Anyways, so the two people that introduced themselves that do want those dribble invites are Andrew and Rachel. So
Cool.
Andrew and Rachel, you guys just won. No competition whatsoever. So thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us. And I hope to see you guys in the next shows as well. I love Dribbble. You can always get job postings on there, which is really cool. There's a lot of people can contact you to do some freelance, which is awesome. I really like Dribbble because a lot of the people that I respect post their stuff on there, and I find a lot of inspiration. Okay, so Andrew's saying we don't wash clothes because we believe that if we do, someone from the family will die.
That's so sad. I don't know.
You're so funny. That's so sad, and you're cracking up.
I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's a tradition, I guess, but
yeah,
I don't know if I have a family tradition they'll cause death. That's like,
you're so funny.
Their own. I mean, okay.
All right, so I just have a few announcements. I created a fun feedback survey that would take 5 minutes to fill out. Please visit hebahbydesign.com/survey or click on the link in the description below, which I don't have in this description, but it should be in the live episode. Please make sure to follow at hebahbydesign on Instagram and Twitter, and sign up to the newsletter for weekly guest introductions at hebahbydesign.com. If you've liked this episode, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel and get notified as soon as I go live. Thanks you, Alexa. Thanks everyone in the chat room. See ya. Bye.